On Capitol Hill perspective, Democratic Congressman Jim Himes, member of the House Intelligence Committee. And with a welcome to you, I'm glad to have you talk here about this. Let's listen to the TSA administrator who's saying the Khorasan group presents this clear and present danger. The intelligence that you've seen, sir, does it tell you that it is at that point?
Well, we've known for a long time, Alex, that that Al-Qaeda is a learning organization. They adapt to our defenses, and as the gentleman from the TSA said, the underwear bomber, the shoe bomber were their part to get around the metallic sensors that we have. So at some level, yes, this is a frightening thing, but it's not a new thing. What happened with the Khorasan group was that we had credible threat information, and of course we had a location, and that allowed the president to make the decision he did in terms of going after personnel there during the airstrikes in Syria. But again, we shouldn't think of Khorasan as some dramatic aberration. Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups like them are learning and adaptable organizations.
How confident are you, though, in our ability to stop terrorists from doing harm? Because we have 275 airports around the world that have direct flights to the United States, of which the intelligence that I'm seeing says that they are right now focusing on a couple of dozen to beef up security across Europe and the Middle East, Northern Africa. You know, that leaves a whole lot of other ones there. Would you be worried that Khorasan or any other group would have access to the other ones that don't necessarily have that stepped-up security right now?
Well, of course you worry about that, and not only do you worry about that, but you worry about whatever technology they might develop that might be able to defeat the security systems that they've got at airports. And look, we've got a real obligation, and we've devoted a lot of resources, and we've actually had some successes. You know, the disruption of the plot that was trying to put explosives into a printer cartridge. You know, the security services around the world are doing their part and spending the resources necessary to do this. But, you know, it raises a broader question. We shouldn't be under the misapprehension that we're always going to be 100%. Look, what happened in the Boston Marathon bombing with what we've sort of come to call a lone wolf attack, in as much as the Tsarnaev brothers weren't, aggressively trained by Al-Qaeda or groups like that, but they managed nonetheless to pull off an attack. That threat, no matter how good our security services are, will be there with us.
All right, let's switch gears just a bit. You said that you support airstrikes in Syria. You are against arming the moderate rebels. So if the moderates are not strengthened, it would seem the Assad government is going to reap all the benefits of these airstrikes, right? I mean, is it at the point where Assad staying in power is potentially the best case scenario?
Well, of course, it's not a best-case scenario. I would characterize it as perhaps a least worst-case scenario. I mean, look, you really at this point in time today have two choices in Damascus, which is Assad and the status quo, and Assad is a monster. There's no two ways about that. Or Assad goes away. And who do we think is now in charge in Damascus? Would it be ISIS? Would it be some Hezbollah-oriented Shiite group? More likely, it would be some combination of the two battling each other in Damascus. So, look, I mean, we need to call a spade here. The attacks that we're leveling against ISIS, of course, are in the at least indirect interest of the Assad regime, and we need to be adults about recognizing that. It just so happens, I think, that ISIS is a much more direct national security threat to the United States than President Assad is at the moment. What's
interesting is you said in your letter it would be bad enough to be on one side of a Middle Eastern civil war. Now we appear to be on both sides. How much do you hear that sentiment echoed throughout the halls of Congress?
Well, unfortunately, we didn't have quite the debate I would have liked to have had in the Congress. In my opinion, it would have been better had we stepped back and had a whole new authorization for the military activities that are underway in the region. And by the way, though I did vote against the arming and training of the Syrian so-called moderates, I completely support the airstrikes and the very aggressive activities that we're taking against ISIS. My concern with the moderates is, we talk about these moderates as though they're they're some kind of team that will always remain the moderates, right? I mean, these are 18, 19, 20-year-old young men in the Middle East. Of course, it's not unusual to see a 19-year-old who's a moderate on Monday to be a non-moderate on a Tuesday. Factions and whole militias, of course, often move to whoever to whoever has the money. And yes, it's put us on both sides of the civil war. And that's why I say we've got to acknowledge that the very aggressive actions we're taking, the airstrikes and whatnot against ISIS, are indirectly serving the interests of the Assad regime. We should be comfortable with that because, again, I think most people would agree that ISIS is a more significant national security threat, but that dynamic is there.
Did Congress want to vote on the airstrikes before the midterms, or were they actually kind of happy to avoid having to put their fingerprints on this?
Well, that's a very good and apt question, Alex. You know, I don't want to be perceived as saying this is all the White House's fault. I don't actually agree with the White House's belief that they have all the authority they need to do this, these new hostilities. But what you point out is absolutely right. There were plenty of members in both the House and the Senate who I think were happy to get away before the election and not have to take a difficult vote, which is unfortunately putting politics before what is pretty close to a sacred constitutional duty.
All right, Representative Jim Himes, I always appreciate your candor, so we'll see you again. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex.